so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the Rockies regular, the bones bursting air, gave proof through the night that her flag was shielded. Oh, save us that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave, the brave. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Carmen Gentile. I'm the representative for this, the 13th Middlesex District, and I want to welcome you all here tonight. In the last century, when the United States was looking at economic ruin, Franklin Roosevelt gave us the New Deal. And now a greater challenge confronts us with climate change. And the Green New Deal promises to lead us to a successful future. So I'd like to introduce Representative Danielle Gregoire.
Thank you, Carmine. Hi, everybody. My name's Danielle Gregoire, and I am the state representative for the 4th Middlesex District. Encompasses the neighborhood of Marlborough and the towns of Northborough and Westborough. I'm having technical difficulties, but we do. So I'm really excited to be here tonight with all of you to hear from Congresswoman Clark and Senator Markey about the great work that they're doing on climate change, because we know that the future of our nation and of our world depends on what we do today and tomorrow to fix our planet. And I'm also proud to be here with Senator Markey because, as some of you may know, last year Massachusetts passed a groundbreaking, nation-leading Alzheimer's bill, which is going to impact the health of hundreds of thousands of people across the Commonwealth, and Senator Markey is doing that work in Washington. So I'm really proud to partner with him on that, and I'm proud to be with him here this evening. I'm proud to call him my friend. I'm proud to call him my United States Senator, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say and tell us about all the good work he's been doing. But in the meantime, I'm going to introduce to you my friend, Representative Carolyn Dykema.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carolyn Dykema, State Representative representing 4 communities here in Metro West, Holliston, Hopkinton, Southborough, and Westborough. And wow, what a crowd. I think it speaks volumes that we are here in the middle of August in the summer, and we've got a beautiful full auditorium here on the issue of climate change, and to hear from our esteemed U.S. Senator Ed Markey about how he is going to champion and has been championing the cause of climate change in Congress for a long time, and in fact longer than a lot of people have been talking about it. In Massachusetts, doing a lot of work on climate change in the state legislature. But we know that We can't solve the climate issues here in Massachusetts alone. We know that we all need to be rowing together as a country, every state doing their part, and we can't do that without leadership and representation in the U.S. Senate and in Congress to help us do that. And we're so Massachusetts with Senator Markey, with Congresswoman Katherine Clark, who we never have to doubt where they are on these issues that are generational, that are going to impact every generation from here on out, whether you are a young person, a parent, a grandparent, we all have a stake in this. And we're fortunate that we have such a champion on our side. So I'm going to now introduce my great colleague in the Massachusetts House, David Lynsky.
Good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Representative David Lynsky from Natick. I represent the towns of Natick, Sherburne, and Millis. I'm honored to be here with all of you here today to hear from Congresswoman Katherine Clark and Senator Ed Markey on the issue of climate change. At the State House, there is no issue that I hear more often via phone call, via letter, via postcard, via email than about solving the issues of climate change. Thankfully, we have two people representing us here in Massachusetts in Senator Ed Markey and Congresswoman Katherine Clark, who are committed to solving that crisis and are working hard to do it. I am thrilled that they have sponsored the Green New Deal. I have worked very, very closely with them on an issue near and dear to my heart, that is preventing gun violence. And both Senator Markey and Congresswoman Clark have been national leaders in that. They are national leaders in so many areas, including climate change. I am thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled that there are so many people from Metro West that are here today. It's my honor to turn it over now to my friend and my colleague, Senator Becca Rausch from Needham.
Good evening, everyone. It is such a pleasure to see such an incredibly packed house. I am so privileged to represent the 12 municipalities of the Norfolk, Bristol, and Middlesex district. Here we go. Wayland, Needham, Wellesley, Natick, Sherburne, Millis, Norfolk, Franklin, Wrentham, Plainville, North Attleboro, and Attleboro all the way down to the Rhode Island border. Thank you. I am particularly pleased to be here tonight to hear from Congresswoman Clark and Senator Markey, and especially honored to partner with the senator at the state level and also with the great representative from Framingham, Maria Robinson, to work on climate change legislation right here in our state legislature in Massachusetts. We have a bill on large building energy standards that has already passed successfully out of committee and is moving its way through, and I'm so thrilled to be that partner as we work hard, diligently, all the time to ensure that all of the generations that come after us have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. It is now my distinct honor and privilege to introduce you to my dear friend and close colleague in the Senate, Senator Jamie Eldridge.
Thank you so much, Senator. Good evening, everyone. State Senator Jamie Eldridge, Senator for the Middlesex and Worcester District, and this is a terrific, incredible turnout on a humid August night. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I am so honored to participate in U.S. Senator Markey and Congresswoman Katherine Clark's Green New Deal Town Hall meeting. And I'm looking out, I know that a number of people here were at a Green New Deal town hall meeting that I held in my district in the town of Hudson several months ago, and we also had an overflow turnout at that. It's clearly the generational existential issue right now, and U.S. Senator Markey really has been the leader on climate change issues, not only during his time as a U.S. Senator, but throughout his tenure as a United States Congressman, and actually was the only congressman to pass a climate change bill during the Obama years. So he really has been a leader on this issue, someone I look to advocate for legislation, including the bill that I filed in the Senate, 100% renewable energy. So I'm looking forward to your questions for the Congresswoman and U.S. Senator Markey. Thanks again for coming. and it is my pleasure to introduce someone that I worked very closely on criminal justice reform issues, Middlesex District Attorney Marian Ryan. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be here with you tonight. And I think before we begin this program, think about three things. First is, you know, we all hear a lot of crazy things coming out about government now. But think about what you have brought to elected office in this city, in this area, on the statewide level, and in Congress. Think about the people who've come out here tonight to talk to you about the work that's been going on. I suggest to you, you have chosen well in people that care about what you care about and represent you well. And secondly, think about what we all know. Despite some tweets out there saying climate change is not real, we don't have to look very far to the 100-degree temperatures, the funnel clouds, all sorts of weather to know that climate change is real. Massachusetts has known that for a long time. Ed Markey has known that for a long time and hasn't just known it, but has put his expertise to work on this issue. And then think about what you know in your own life. Every important undertaking you have ever been successful at, I would suggest to you it is unlikely that you did that alone. You do that in partnership. And we are very fortunate here, particularly in Middlesex County, but in Massachusetts, to have wonderful partners on so many issues, whether it's criminal justice, whether it's dealing with the opioid crisis, whether it is looking at this challenge of climate change. And you're fortunate to have here tonight two folks who could not be better partners. As district attorney, when you look at these issues and you look to Washington, you never reach out to Senator Markey that the answer of will you help is not a resounding yes. And it's not yes and I'll send someone, it's yes and when can I be there. He's there on a Sunday afternoon sitting in a drug rehabilitation center. He's there early in the morning meeting with doctors to talk about how do we best address the opioid issue. Here tonight with this wonderful crowd in the middle of the summer to talk about what we should be doing about climate change. And the same is true with Representative Clark. We have wonderful, wonderful partners. It is not an accident that our level of success is so high. So I'm looking forward to tonight. I'm proud to be here with Senator Markey and Congresswoman Clark and happy to join with all of you as we discuss this important issue. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you another great partner, my friend, my colleague, Representative Robinson from Framingham.
Hold up. I'm a terrible millennial, so I have to take a picture of all of you first because this is wild from up here. So everybody smile. Thank you so much for coming out to Framingham today. It is delightful to have all of you here in this extremely warm room, but talking about something wonderfully stimulating, so I promise that you won't fall asleep while we're out here doing this. For those of you who know me, I spent 10 years working in the renewable energy industry, working on climate change. It is the biggest cause of my life, and in large part, that's because of Ed Markey. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to intern for a gentleman that now people know about, because his name is Jay Inslee. You might have heard of him. He's got glasses, and apparently everyone is very attracted to said glasses now. It's hilarious. And he sat on two committees, Energy and Commerce and the Global Warming Committees in Congress. And I had the opportunity to staff him on the Global Warming Committee, where the chair was none other than then Representative Markey. And I just was completely amazed by the incredible amount of work that he was doing back in 2007, when this was still an incredibly important issue, but maybe not the global crisis that it is today. And he talked about it with the urgency that it needed to be discussed. We were talking about plug-in hybrid electric vehicles back in 2007 and trying to get people on board with that, and we're still getting there today. So I am thrilled to be able to be in this room tonight with all of you. For those who have heard me talk before, my husband and I chose to live in Framingham because we're a bunch of engineering nerds and put together a spreadsheet of 300 different things of what we wanted from a place where we want to live. And one of the things that I chose at the time was making sure that I lived in the 5th Congressional District to be represented at that point in time by Representative Markey, and now I'm utterly thrilled to be represented by Katherine Clark as well. So I'm going to turn this over to the wonderful Mayor of Framingham, Yvonne Spicer, who's going to really kick this off now. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Welcome to the great city of Framingham. I just cannot say enough about Katherine Clark and Senator Markey for their dedication and commitment to being here to share some ideas on the Green New Deal, but more importantly, for being a partner here in Metro West. I know for the city of Framingham, we don't lose sight of the fact that our environment is extremely important to us. We don't lose sight of the fact that we have to leave a world for our children that is in better hands than it is now. We don't lose sight of the fact that we have champions in Washington that will not stop, that will not quit until change comes to us in the United States of America. And I am so proud those leaders represent us right here in the 5th Congressional District. I know that Senator Markey and I, people are going to start to talk about us because we keep spending a lot of time together. And I was proud to have him by my side on Sunday advocating for gun rights and making sure gun checks are in this state and around this country. And just as he is working so hard, and so is our Congresswoman Katherine Clark. She's not afraid to tackle the issues, the tough issues, whether it be climate change, whether it be race relations, whether it be gun control. She's not afraid to step up to the plate, and I am very proud to call her my Congresswoman. And without further ado, I introduce to you our Congresswoman, the 5th Congressional District Congresswoman, Katherine Clark.
Oh my goodness. Woo! Thank you. Maria was right. You are a beautiful sight. Oh my goodness, we cannot thank you enough for coming out on an August night at the end of summer. I know many of you are getting ready for back to school, but this couldn't be a more important issue, and we are delighted to have you here today. And I want to thank Mayor Spicer for her work, for her kind words, for all she does in Framingham. I'm going to move this mic because I think it's interfering. And to all the representatives and senators who came today, and our DA, Marian Ryan, for being here, for being such partners on this work and on so many other issues. Your leadership at the local and state level is how we are going to build the resiliency of our communities. It is how we are going to build a green economy that works for everyone. And these partnerships couldn't be more crucial. It wasn't very long ago that I was a freshman on the Science and Technology Committee in Congress. And people asked me, what surprised you when you went to Congress? And I can tell you, I was surprised at the questions that were being asked. I often wanted to ask my colleagues if they knew that their microphone was really on, because the anti-science, the seemingly willful ignorance about what is at stake for our planet, what is needed to build a green economy, what we have to invest in research to make sure that we can find the solutions to address climate change and build strong, resilient communities. And it's a new day in the House of Representatives in Congress. With the Democrats in the majority, we believe in science, we believe in being proactive, and we believe in climate change and creating the solutions to address it. And in the first 8 months that we have been in the majority, we have had over 20 hearings. We've formed the Select Committee on Climate Change. We are using the legislative levers at our disposal, including on the Appropriations Committee where I sit, to invest in research and development to put us on the road to making the Green New Deal a reality. And in April, House Democrats stood together to pass the Climate Action Now Act that requires the president to develop and update annually a plan for the United States to meet the standards in the Paris Agreement. And we have moved to prohibit the Department of Interior from issuing a lease for development of production of oil or natural gas off the coast of New England. We are working on legislation to develop alternative energy sources like offshore wind technology to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge by repealing a provision that was put in the Republican tax plan that permitted oil and gas drilling on the Arctic coastal plain. And in a bipartisan vote, last January, we permanently reauthorized the Land and Water Conservation Fund that had included over 1 million additional acres of wilderness for preservation. But our work is just beginning. We know what is at stake, and we know that climate change is the defining issue of our time, and it requires bold, urgent action to transform our economy, to transform our energy and our electrical grid in a thoughtful and inclusive way. And that's why I am so proud to be an original co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. But none of this happens by accident. And it all starts with you. And I know that much of what you watch happening in DC seems so crazy, out of control, hard to actually influence, but you do. And never forget the power of your voice, the power of your vote at the ballot box to change the course. And we have to change course on this issue. And the Green New Deal is about renewable energy. It is about upgrading the grid, but it's also about climate justice, empowering workers as we build a new economy, protecting our most vulnerable communities against the impacts of climate change, and ensuring that everyone has a voice and has a protected vote to determine how we move forward as a country. So in that vein, I look forward to your questions tonight. I always learn far more from you than I in these town halls than I can. I'm just so grateful for your knowledge and your interest and your curiosity and what you bring to these communities. But I really am pleased tonight to introduce our senator, Senator Ed Markey. Not yet. 4 decades, Ed Markey has been the national leader on clean energy, on climate change and the environment. Whether it was authoring the Appliance Efficiency Act or passing fuel economy standards to the Waxman-Markey bill, which is the only comprehensive climate change bill to ever pass a chamber of Congress. Ed is a true champion. And well before it was on the top of the agenda for Congress, it was on the top of Ed Markey's agenda. And now he's teamed up with a freshman, you may have heard of her, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to co-author the Green New Deal resolution, harnessing the energy of you, of the grassroots movement, to lead our fight in the halls of Congress. So it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage the man who taught us there are no emergency rooms for sick planets, my friend, Senator Ed Markey.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to Katherine Clark, already a superstar on the floor of the United States House of Representatives every single day. She is just absolutely fantastic and a leader, not just here, but all across our country. When she speaks, people listen. And so it's my great honor to be here tonight with our great, great leader. And to Mayor Yvonne Spicer, thank you so much for being this incredible, incredible voice. I was with her on Sunday at Moms Demand Action on a rally on the floor in front of Boston City Hall. She is representing you everywhere, not just here in Framingham, but she's a voice in our nation on gun safety. To District Attorney Marian Ryan, thank you. You are the leader in the country on ensuring that we treat opioid addiction. We don't imprison it, that we change the dynamic. And so thank you so much, Marian, for everything that you are doing. And Carmen Gentile, thank you for your incredible leadership up in the State House. To Maria Robinson, I knew when the microphone wasn't working that the right person to have it is someone who has a PhD in chemical engineering from MIT. So thank you. I had no doubt that it was going to be fixed. And to Senator Becca Rausch, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership up in the State House. To State Senator Jamie Eldridge, a leader on climate change from the day that you joined the State Senate. To Representative Danielle, Gregoire, my friend, a warrior every single day on the floor of the Massachusetts State Legislature, standing shoulder to shoulder with Carolyn Dykema. Carolyn is just an incredible warrior as well. And Representative David Lynsky, such a voice on gun control for our state and for our country, because we have to be the leaders. We have Framingham City Councilors George King and Margaret Shepard, who are here. Framingham School Committee, Adam Freudberg, Gloria Pascal, Beverly Hugo, Ricky Finley, Ashland Selectman Rob Shearer, and Senator Karen Spilka is traveling, but she wanted to be here, and her staff is representing her. So, and by the way, can we just once again reflect upon the fact that when the president tries to zero out the national endowments for the arts, that it's people like Ana Santos who sang the national anthem, which is the reason why we have to give full funding to it. So thank you, Ana, for the phenomenal job which you did. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for your leadership on climate change, on clean energy in our country. And thank you for making Massachusetts the leader on this issue. But I will say this, reflecting back on the mayor and I on Sunday. I was in Worcester yesterday at a Moms Demand Action rally there as well. That right now, I should not be here. As much as I want to be here with you this evening, right now, I should be on the floor of the United States Senate in a special session to ensure that we have background checks on every gun sold in the United States, that we ban assault weapons, that we ban high-capacity magazines that we saw used in El Paso and in Dayton, that we do research on the causes of gun violence in our society, that we not allow people to buy an Insta-gun on Instagram, that we pass real, meaningful gun safety laws in our country. That's what Katherine Clark is all about. That is what I am all about. That we make NRA stand for not relevant anymore in American politics. That's where I should be. That's where Katherine should be. We can get all of this done by Labor Day and put it on the desk of President Trump. But we know that the NRA holds the Republican Party in a vise-like grip that does not give them permission to be able to deal with this incredible public health crisis that we have in the United States. If Massachusetts laws were on the books nationwide, we would cut gun fatalities from 34,000 down to 6,000. That's how strong our laws are. And we're not happy. We know there is more work to do here in Massachusetts. So Katherine made reference to it. And the Green New Deal is something that Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I introduced in early February of 2019. And we had a very simple goal. We break it into three parts. Part number one, the science. Late last year, in 2018, the United Nations issued a report saying that climate now poses an existential threat to the planet, and that we had to begin to take extremely aggressive steps before 2030 if we were to avoid the worst, most catastrophic consequences. Number two, at the end of 2018, pursuant to a federal law, all 13 federal agencies that have responsibility for climate change issued a report. And that report from Donald Trump's 13 agencies said this, that if we do not take preventative action now, if we continue business as usual, that the temperature on the planet could rise upwards of 9 degrees by 2100. It also said that the sea, the ocean, could rise by upwards of 10 feet. What does that mean for us? Well, it means for us that if we continue with that temperature rise, Greenland is not that far from us. It's 1,000 miles long, it's 300 miles wide, and it's got a cake of ice on top of it, 10 to 20 Empire State Buildings high. Now, you take that ice cube and you put it into a full glass of water already, then you're looking at catastrophic damage to Massachusetts, to the entire east coast of our country. That's just us. Off our shore is the second fastest warming body of water on the planet after the Arctic. On the planet. The cod need cold water. They have to head north. It's changing. our state. It's changing who we are. So we lay that out first in the Green New Deal. Number two, we then call for aggressive, historic action to put in place the preventative measures. As Katherine said, you know, my wife is a public health doctor, and the bottom line is there are no emergency rooms for planets. So you have to engage in prevention. So what we call for is a massive deployment of the technologies that can help us to avoid the worst, most catastrophic effects. And what does that mean? Well, it means, just for a few examples, what we've seen over the last 100 years is tax breaks for the oil industry, oil depletion allowance, natural gas companies, coal companies, nuclear companies for the last 70 years. Then, when we turn around and we say we want permanent tax breaks for wind and solar and all electric vehicles and for all electric buildings and for new storage and battery technologies, they point at us and they say, oh, socialism. And you know what we say? Give us the socialism you've had for the fossil fuel industry for the last 100 years, and we will bury you in the marketplace with the deployment of these technologies. I am the House author of the Fuel Economy Standards Law that passed in 2007 that President Obama used along with the California waiver to increase fuel economy standards to 54.5 miles per gallon. That's what gave Elon Musk the ability to go to the capital markets and say, look how high the goal is for our country. We're going to have to invent new technologies. Now Donald Trump is saying he wants to roll it back to only 38 miles per gallon by 2021 and then never increase it again. Well, that leads to dramatic increases not only in greenhouse gases, but in importation of oil. So my own feeling, when people say, what's the Green New Deal about? It's about 54 miles per gallon, then 64 miles per gallon, then 74 miles per gallon, then 84 miles per gallon. We put 70% of the oil that we consume into gasoline tanks. We have an ability to invent our way to the future. I've introduced a bill with Chris Van Hollen to create a climate bank, which would be a way in which the city of Framingham, sounds funny, the city of Framingham, and to be able to say to private sector companies, you can get low interest loans in order to insulate your buildings to the highest possible standards. And you can repay it over a long period of time. And that $35 billion could actually leverage upwards of $750 billion worth of investment to begin the process of making these buildings so much more efficient. Katherine made reference to it, but I'm the author of the 1987 law for appliance efficiency, which ultimately led to multiple rulemakings on, for example, air conditioning. Air conditioning is something that determines largely in many parts of the country how much electricity has to be generated, how many coal-burning plants you need. Well, my law back then avoided the need for scores of coal-burning plants because we just made it more efficient. My mother used to say to me, Eddie, when she was disappointed in me growing up, she would say, Eddie, you have to learn how to work smarter and not harder. Your father and I are going to donate your brain to Harvard Medical School as a completely unused human organ. Well, that's what energy efficiency is, huh? You know, we insulate the buildings. We get more efficient appliances. We reduce dramatically the amount of electricity which we need. And you can go on to manufacturing. You can go on to other sectors. We can do this. We know how to do this. We're Americans. That is our strength. You know, back in the 1990s, I passed 3 bills. One moved over 200 megahertz to create the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th cell phone license. And it was, for people who remember back then, it was like Gordon Gekko had a phone that looked like it was a brick. But by 1996, you had a flip phone in your pocket. And that flip phone was under 10 cents a minute, and it created Darwinian paranoia-inducing competition in the marketplace. Huh? And then 10 years later, another young person came along and created a phone that you all have on your possession right now, an iPhone. And I know that because I can see many of you looking down right now and not even paying attention. I'm very proud of that. I hope that we can reach a day where no one ever looks down again. No one ever looks up and talks to people. Everyone would just be looking down. Well, not one home had broadband in America in February of 1996 when I was able to pass the bill, the lead Democrat, the Telecommunications Act. By 2000, we had a dot-com bubble. But that meant a broadband deployment in our country. Huh? So we can do this. We know how to do this. It's who we are. And it is imperative that we do it. We can save all of creation by engaging in massive job creation. Millions of new jobs created in the same way we did in the broadband revolution. Same thing. It won't take anywhere near where the denier-in-chief in the Oval Office believes that it will take. So for me, I know we can do it. We're genetically hardwired as a people to be able to do it. And by the way, in Africa right now, there's 500 million people walking around with a wireless device in their pocket, revolutionizing their countries and their economies because we invented it and lowered the cost and made it available to them. The same thing will be true for wind and solar and all-electric vehicles and batteries and all-electric buildings, which we will be the leader. And then ultimately, that will reduce the temperature of the planet. But you cannot preach temperance from a bar stool. You cannot have a president who is a climate denier. You cannot have a president who doesn't even understand that Mar-a-Lago is going to turn into Mar-a-Lagoon over the next 15 years. So we have to wage this battle. And we can do it, and we can deploy these technologies. And third, what we did in the bill was do something which President Trump thinks is quite controversial. What we did was we drafted the third part of it to talk about who is going to be a beneficiary of this New Deal. And mindful of how many people got left behind in the first New Deal, which were a lot of people who just didn't happen to be the right color or the right income group. Huh? So we wanted to say it very explicitly. Intersectionality, minorities, people who do not have the income, that the people in Framingham are lucky to have. Huh? We're going to mention them. Now, what did we use as our document? I will tell you what we used as our document. We went back and we looked at Franklin Delano Roosevelt's 1944 State of the Union Address, where he laid out a second Bill of Rights for all Americans, the veterans who were going to be returning a year later from fighting World War II. And in his economic Bill of Rights, second Bill of Rights, he laid out what every American is entitled to. Everyone's entitled to a job. Everyone's entitled to a good education. Everyone's entitled to health care. Everyone's entitled to know as a small business person that a monopoly just can't wipe you out. And we put that in as section number 3. And Donald Trump and the Koch brothers said, socialism. And what we say is the second New Deal, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had the right idea. That should be something that every single American is entitled to aspire to for their family. And we want that as the core of this bill, that no one gets left behind, that we put together programs, regardless of race or income or country of origin, that they too are beneficiaries. So that's the Green New Deal. And we thank all of you for being here tonight. And again, partnering with Katherine every day is a special, treat and privilege for me. And now, if you want, we will take questions from the audience, and Rory and Nolan will be at the microphones, and we would love to hear from you. By the way, if there are young people here, you can cut right to the front of the line, okay? You can cut right to the front of the line. Anyone here, Sunrise Movement, Framingham State, cut to the front of the line. No questions asked, okay? We want to hear from you. Okay, so let's go over here. Rory?
Oh, thank you. Hi, I am actually...
Hold on, can you just wait 1 second? Yeah, we just want everyone to know who you are and where you're from.
So my name's Tom Boland. I'm from Southborough, and I actually am here representing the Sunrise Movement. And my question is for you. Sunrise. My question is for you, Representative Clark. Would you be willing to join Senator Markey in signing the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge? I have it right here. I have a pen for you to sign it with. Is that something you'll be willing to do?
Does this work? Oh, yeah, there it is. So I do not take fossil fuel money, but I'd be happy to look at the official pledge as well.
Are you willing to sign it right now?
Well, I'd like to read it.
And may I say this on behalf of Katherine? The chances of anyone from the fossil fuel industry giving her any money is precisely zero. Okay, precisely. Just so you know. But yeah, let's wait.
I didn't leave money on the table.
Yeah, so you.
We should.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And.
So are you willing to sign it right now? You can read it right now. It's saying that you will not take any.
My staff will bring it and take it. Thank you.
Yeah. Nolan, back over this way.
Hello, Senator and Congresswoman Clark. I'd like to ask, we support the Green New Deal, and we've been collecting signatures from the grassroots here in Framingham to support it, and we have copies of those petitions for both you and the congressperson. But what I'd like to know is if the administration manages to pass the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, what does that do to the New Deal? Has that been discussed?
I can speak for Katherine. I will tell you we are not going to support any trade agreement that does not have the strongest possible environmental standards that is included. We are going to make sure that other countries can't pollute as a way of making their products cheaper. And so we are going to, and we build it actually into the Green New Deal. We talk about trade agreements having the strongest possible environmental protection. So it's something that we explicitly mention because we don't want our workers losing their jobs because other countries pollute in order to make products that then compete with the people in Metro West. Yes, ma'am.
And can I just
sure.
Can I just add to that about the trade that one of the issues that is really critical and important, thank you, to make sure is that not only do we have good language in there about environmental protections, but that we have truly valid enforcement provisions. Because it was something that was promised in NAFTA, but never came to materialize. So we can write all the good things into trade agreements that we want, but if we don't have the levers to enforce it, it won't mean anything. So that is an ongoing discussion that we will be pushing for to get a yes vote on any trade agreement going forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jan Jones. I'm from Maynard. Bear with me, I'm going to get to the question. Thank you for proposing the Green New Deal and for working with the Sunrise Movement. Many of us agree that in order to fulfill its goals, control of fossil fuel companies over our government must be broken. And in order to do that, certain Supreme Court rulings, including Citizens United, must be reversed. And the only way to do that is via a constitutional amendment. In the Senate, One amendment has been proposed, but it is too weak to be effective. So my question is, will you file and lead the charge for the We the People amendment, which has been filed in the House as HJ Res 48, and it has been co-sponsored by Katherine Clark and 7 of the 8 representatives from Massachusetts? Will you file and support this amendment?
Well, I support the strongest possible provision to overturn Citizens United, the strongest possible, with the exception of the Dred Scott decision and a couple of others. It's probably the worst decision in the history of the United States that allows corporations to purchase the United States House and Senate. So I haven't looked at it, but if what you're saying is accurate, then there's a high probability that I will be doing that, because there is no more invidious threat to democracy in our country than Citizens United. And by the way, that's why Donald Trump cannot be reelected, because there could be 2 more Supreme Court justices that are named by him, and it will make it impossible for us to be able to change those laws. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, we have a question here.
Beautiful.
I'm Anya.
Yes, could you move the microphone in a little closer?
Oh, a little closer.
And introduce.
I'm Anya. She's Anya, and we had a question. Anya's going to be a 5th grader at Dunning Elementary here in Framingham, and yes, and we're also a part of Girl Scout Troop 69236. And what she wanted to know was, what can her and her troop do this year to help climate change and bring things back under control? Is there a certain project that they can get involved with, either with the town, the city, I should say, the state, or even your organization?
Well, thank you, Anya, for being here and for being a Girl Scout. I was a Girl Scout. I am now a member of the Capitol Hill Girl Scout honorary troop, and was one on Beacon Hills. I'm sure many of the senators and representatives behind you are. You're already on the road to being a community leader and to looking to how you can help. We are so lucky to have so many state representatives and senators and Mayor Spicer here. There are endless things that you can do on the local level. And we really are, this whole movement around saving the planet and climate change starts with you. And we're so grateful that you're here. And whatever you and your troop decide to do, whether it's an education project or cleaning up a trail locally or helping with some sort of recycling, Mayor Spicer is making a list I can see right now for activities that you can do. But that's how we start. And this is about you. This is about the future of this planet, because we want your future and your opportunities to be endless and to be what they should be. So thank you for being here. You're our inspiration.
So, and if I may, my wife was a brownie, but a few years ago she actually worked with the Girl Scouts to create a badge for working on breast cancer, women's health. So maybe that could be a project for you, to have a Girl Scout badge for girls not just in Framingham but all across the country that they can earn and they can win with their own efforts. And again, as Katherine was saying, here in Framingham, as good as they are and they're at the top of the list, there's more work to do to ensure that in every single area where our environment is being polluted, that people take leadership. And your generation is the one that's going to ultimately be harmed the most. You know, you'll be there in alive in 2100 when the temperatures have risen by 9 degrees Fahrenheit. So every project that you put together is going to make a big difference and then be a model for the rest of the country. We're not just the Bay State, we're the brain state. And your brain, working with your friends, can make a huge difference. But it's just great that you're here tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you for being leaders. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Len Yeomans. I'm an environmental major and originally from Framingham. I took environmental studies here. That's what got me so interested. And my question is, I'm so excited about Green New Deal. I think it's an amazing program, or deal. But how would, in future, when the Green New Deal passes and grows, how would we work with the UN on working on passing sanctions and other legislation to help countries move away from oil industries and the damaging of their natural resources?
That's an excellent question. Donald Trump has withdrawn us from the Paris Climate Agreement, which John Kerry and President Obama and Ernie Moniz, Massachusetts, negotiated. Now, we're not finally out of the Paris Agreement because you have to give 3 years notice. And so we're not completely withdrawn until November of 2020. And I think there's something else going on that month. So it's just one more reason why we have to defeat Donald Trump. You know, if he wins, it's like a death sentence for the planet. Right? If for 8 years we're not leading and other countries in the world, India and China, think that they can get away without doing what they can do as well. Inside of the Waxman-Markey bill, which we passed in 2009, just 10 years ago on the House floor, 219 to 212, it was defeated in the Senate. President Obama said it would be one of the top 3 or 4 bills he would sign because he put climate at the top of his agenda. What we did was we built into that legislation billions of dollars per year to help other countries in the world who aren't as rich as we are, so that they too could participate in this green revolution, this technology revolution. We actually put in billions of dollars to encourage Brazil not to tear down the Amazon. Those are the lungs of the planet. We have a new president down in Brazil who is acting in a highly immoral way, actually, in just walking away from the entire Brazilian history of a dedication to conservation. So you are right. It's not enough for us to do it here. We then have to create mechanisms by which we help other countries in the world to be able to deploy these technologies and engage in conservation practices within their own country. Catherine?
I just wanted to add that thank you for talking about the global leadership aspect of this. And I think that is something that under this administration and under the leadership of the Republican leadership in the Senate, we're struggling with. And we have such a role to play. And it not only is good for the planet, good to help other countries use alternative and renewable energy sources, but it's going to be good for our economy if we're the leaders in the innovation and we can help sell this energy that is going to be planet-saving and great for creating good jobs here in the United States. So thank you for reminding us about how interwoven this work is around the globe, and we have to be a team. And so it is so important that we get back into the Paris Accord, get back into a functioning State Department, and be able to be at the UN to be able to promote this and really highlight the work of the United States and be that leader on these issues. So thank you, and thank you for your major and your interest.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Do you have to hold it? Okay. Is it okay? Okay, so I'm sorry. My name is Jordan Bryan, and I represent Framingham here. I live here. Two things that I didn't hear highlighted in your speech regarding climate change that I think are huge factors that contribute to it, both our consumption of beef, like red meat specifically, and also transit. I mean, and anyone that lives in Boston knows our transit system is extremely old and decrepit. And we need like Amtrak, we don't have enough trains, we don't have high-speed rail, that. So what are you working on in those areas to be able to kind of really combat all facets of climate change. I mean, yeah, car emissions are nice, but they're by no means the only thing.
So our goal is to actually help to overhaul agricultural processes so that they're more sustainable, that they don't contribute as much as they do today to greenhouse gases, and to actually create incentives for farmers to move their practices. In a lot of ways, farmers are the original conservationists. And if we create the incentives for them to change their practices, as we produce beef or other products in our country that contribute disproportionately to greenhouse gases, we can make a difference. Now, and I recommend to anyone who is here, try an Impossible Burger. It's unbelievable. How many of you have tried an Impossible Burger? Look at this. How good is it? It's great, yeah. So there's technology out there right now that is going to, I think, in a way, provide a competition for the traditional agricultural industry to move in that direction. Catherine.
And I know that part of what we're working on in the House, and I know that the Senator is as well, is a robust infrastructure bill that, of course, we all know we need roads, we need bridges repaired, but we also need to be looking at public transportation and how do we get people out of their cars? How do we establish rural broadband? How do we make sure that we are upgrading our electrical grid? All of this is part of an infrastructure plan that, by the way, creates great jobs. The oil industry cut my mic. And also at the same time, we can create great jobs and thriving economies while we are rebuilding and re-greening America. So that public transportation piece is so critical to how we get there and how we combat this.
And I will say that we just passed a surface transportation bill out of the Senate Public Works Committee, on which I serve. And I worked with others very hard to build in a climate change section of the bill. Kind of shocking in 2019 in a Republican-controlled Senate. But we worked very hard to do that, and now I serve on the other committee in the Senate, the Commerce Committee, to which that bill is going. So it's important for us to understand, you know, that the transportation sector plays a big role. And let's be honest, brown people and black people have been much more close to pollution than white people in the suburbs throughout their entire history in our country. So in the inner city, when all the traffic is there, when the facilities are antiquated, it does ultimately affect the lives, the health of those who live closest to it. And in too many instances across our country, those are people of color. So we agree with you 100%. And thank you for raising it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Barry Rosenberg. I'm from Westford, Massachusetts. I am also a member of We the People.
Okay.
And I'm glad you also support gun control. And I'm glad that you acknowledge NRA's grip. And I would like to point out the NRA lobby is something that will also be impacted by the We the People amendment. And was wondering if we would be able to arrange a meeting between We the People in Massachusetts and yourself, and whom we could arrange it by. We could better help give you the information, the implications of the amendment.
Done. And Rory's going to be the person, and as soon as we're done tonight, Rory and you will have a meeting, and then we will have a meeting subsequent to that. And I just want to add this parenthetically, just so you know, on gun control. Back in 1994, the Chinese semi-automatic assault weapons at $90 a piece were the ones that were most frequently used in these incidents of mass carnage in our country. And I was successful in organizing the effort in 1994 to have President Clinton put a permanent ban on the importation of 1 million semi-automatic assault weapons at $90 a piece into our country. That's now kept out about 20 million assault weapons out of our country. Now, and I'm proud of that. But inside of the 1994 law, we had a ban on domestically produced assault weapons, and that expired after 10 years. So that's what Congresswoman Clark and I want to do. We want to go to the House and Senate floor and have the votes on these issues and put it on their desk. And I'd be more than willing to look at We the People's proposal to see how I can work with you to advance that goal. So thank you so much for being here. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ayush Kumar, and I'm from Wayland.
Can you just speak up just a little bit more?
So I'm from Wayland, and climate change is a really important issue to me, and I think legislation like this is what we need, but I think we need to acknowledge that it has its consequences as well. The Green New Deal calls for immediate decarbonization, but that means no more auto industry, no more coal industry, no more oil industry. So the workers for those industries will lose their jobs, they could lose their health care, they could lose their homes. So how will you help these people after this legislation is passed?
So that is a very good question. And what I did in 2009, in, again, the Waxman-Markey bill, which did pass the House, is, number one, we built in $200 billion for carbon capture and sequestration. So we could remove the carbon from traditional sources of energy. You know who opposed it? Peabody Coal, Alpha Coal, Arch Coal. They wanted to kill that. They wish they could have that back today. But we also built in a very significant program for anyone who did lose their job. It included 3 years of full pay, 3 years of full health care. It included job training for them. And again, it was the coal industry that killed that. Now, they've gone from 80,000 coal miners in 2009. Now they're down to 50,000 coal miners. Those miners didn't get anything. And that's without the Waxman-Markey bill passing. So we're not insensitive to this issue. My father was a local union president, electricians union. So I'm very sensitive to these people and their jobs. So it has to be not just, it's not just a transition, it also has to be a just transition. But you should also know this. We're down to 50,000 coal miners. We now have 350,000 people in the wind and solar industry. Who are they? They're roofers, they're electricians, they're steel workers, and if the Department of Interior under Donald Trump hadn't just killed our Vineyard Wind project, we'd have 3,000 or 4,000 people off our coastline installing that new equipment. And so I agree with you, we have to take care of the existing workers. We have to be very sensitive to them and their families. But at the same time, there is an unlimited job creation opportunity in the green economy that will create millions of new jobs, high-paying jobs that will help them. But you're so right to raise that issue, and believe me, it's in my soul that they get everything they deserve, because in many ways their companies want to take away their pensions, want to take away their benefits. It's the job of Democrats to ensure that they get the protections which they need.
Hi, my name is Isabel Petroni. I'm from Framingham. So recently, unfortunately, in the past week, the administration has chosen to roll back Endangered Species Act provisions. And we already know that they have been trying to limit the expansion of our natural resources that include our wildlife preserves, our wilderness areas, things that make America, us, as this great wilderness and such this diverse place for wildlife. So how do you plan in the Green New Deal to address both of those issues, both in protecting the Endangered Species Act and strengthening it, as well as protecting our areas that we find important in our natural wilderness?
Thank you. So I can tell you about the work we are doing to combat this, and you are so right about what is happening with this administration, not just with the Endangered Species Act, but with so many on the regulatory level, on the administrative level, rolling back environmental protections, rolling back wilderness area protections, loosening up the ability to mine on public lands, all sorts of threats to our environment, to animal life that often doesn't make the headlines. And so we have to be vigilant. We have, on the Appropriations Committee, responded to the president's budget where we saw devastating cuts in funding to all of these areas. And put money back in. And we are going to, when we get back in September, working out that budget, coming to agreement with the Senate is going to be our top priority. And we have to be able to respond and keep track. This administration moves quickly, and they are tearing at the threads of so many protections, but it often doesn't make the news. It's done at a regulatory level, it's done at an administrative level, but the effects can be devastating and they're cumulative. So we have to work together to make sure that we are crafting legislative response and that when we are doing our budgets, we are watching these line items and make sure that these agencies continue to have the enforcement tools that they need and that we continue to have a dialogue with the public on how to push back and preserve and protect these enforcement abilities. So thank you for raising it. It is not going unnoticed. We will not go quietly and let the administration roll back these protections. I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, the Endangered Species Act is like the Constitution of protecting species. And if climate change continues at the pace at which it is, and we're looking at 2100, we could be looking at 500,000 to 1 million species that are endangered just because of the changes in their habitat. And I am the lead Democrat in the Senate on protecting the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and I have been for years. They just want to put like a gas station on top of this incredible preserve rather than increasing the efficiency of the vehicles which we drive. Therefore, we would not need that oil at all. So thank you for raising it. And again, it's just one more reason why Donald Trump has to become a one-term president. So thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Erica Ball from Natick. Thank you both for being here. It's a distinct honor and pleasure. A procedural question. I know that the House, under the leadership of our Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, has been working hard and creatively on passing a lot of legislation on climate change, on gun issues, on criminal justice. And my question is this. These bills have passed the House. They have not even been introduced in the Senate. If we don't change the complexion of the Senate in 2020, what happens to the bills that were passed in this Congress in the House but never got to the floor in the Senate?
You have raised the central campaign theme of the Democrats in 2020. So because of Katherine's great work and the other leaders in the House, they have sent over legislation that would require background checks before anyone purchases a gun. Mitch McConnell said, dead on arrival. They sent over legislation on net neutrality. I'm the leader on net neutrality in the Senate. Mitch McConnell said, dead on arrival. So we're going to take about a half a dozen of these issues, which all poll out at 75% or higher. We're going to turn it into Mitch McConnell's legislative graveyard, and we're going to run against him, and we're going to create a political graveyard for Republicans running for the Senate and the House next year. And then in 2021, we'll have an ability to be able to pass legislation that the American people want to have put on the books.
Yeah, it's a two-word answer, ditch Mitch. That's where we are.
Thank you. Yes, right over here.
Just one last word. My game plan, and we are very fortunate in Massachusetts that our political back is protected, and we know we have great representation. My game plan is to zero in on Mitch McConnell's opponent. I think we have a great Democrat running there, and she will get a lot of attention from me, and I encourage our friends here to do the same. Zero in on him, send her some money, make sure she has the wherewithal to combat Mitch McConnell, and let's get rid of him.
Thank you. And I will say this, as the Democratic presidential candidates winnow down, and there are fewer and fewer of them, I think we might find some of them are incredibly great candidates for the United States Senate in their home states. And I think we should expect that to be happening. Yes, over here, sir.
My name is Ken Brown. I live in Marlborough. My company, Safe Hydrogen, is headquartered in Lexington. So we've got two districts. The resolution talks about going to 100% renewable generation of electricity, and which is so important for the electrification of vehicles and also for newly electrified buildings, because we don't want to power vehicles and buildings with fossil fuel generated power. But being in the storage business, I know that renewables alone cannot be the path to fully 100% no carbon. And have you thought about doing something on storage?
Well, I believe that storage is going to be the revolution, and that a high percentage of the young people here in Framingham who are thinking about their sophomore or junior science projects are trying to figure out what the little twist is that's going to occur in storage so that they can become revolutionaries to save the planet and also become the wealthiest people who ever lived in the history of the planet. And it's happening in every school across the country. It's happening at MIT, it's happening at Berkeley, it's happening everywhere. And billions of dollars are being put into this technology. And in the same way that there's a Moore's law for solar, I'll just give you a couple of numbers. There were 2,000 total megawatts of solar in 2008. 2,000. As of the end of last year, 65,000 megawatts of solar. Okay? Why? Because we put the tax breaks on the books. Why? Because states passed renewable electricity standards. We changed the policies. It's not that the sun got brighter all of a sudden. It's that we finally had the votes on wind. There were 25,000 megawatts in 2008. At the conclusion of 2018, just 10 years later, we were up to nearly 100,000. Didn't get windier, but the tax incentives changed, the regulatory process changed. On all electric vehicles, this is a staggering number, 2,000 total all-electric vehicles in the United States in 2008. By the end of 2018, we were up to 1 million, and we're going to sell between 300 and 400,000 this year. So there's a Moore's law in each one of these areas, and there's a Moore's law in storage as well. Storage is getting better and better and better. And wind and solar plus storage means that there is an existential threat to the business plan of the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil. And my own belief is that we're going to be making these breakthroughs year after year until by the time we reach 2030, we will have a storage capacity that revolutionizes how electricity is consumed here in Framingham, but in every other city and town across our country, and ultimately across the world, because that's the kind of technology that we want to have sold or given to countries that need it across the planet. So I'm a technological optimist. I saw it with cell phones. I saw it with broadband. I've been seeing it with wind and solar and all electric vehicles. And we're going to see it with storage as well. And that's what is the scariest thing that causes nightmares to these fossil fuel executives. That's what forces them to toss and turn all night long, because they know that it's over. and it could happen very quickly. And all they will have is stranded fossil fuel assets that the Securities Exchange Commission will be filing complaints that they're not accurately reporting how much of their great wealth will never be realized. So storage, from my perspective, is the next frontier, but like the Impossible Burger, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen fast because young people are on it the same way they were on the digital revolution. Katherine.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Storage is key to how this works. And my husband grew up in very rural Colorado. And when we go back there, it is wind farm after wind farm. But how do we store that so that we can get it on demand? And it's going to be investment. And this is where the federal government has to come and help create the incentives for the capital market so that we are investing in the research, in the technology. It's critical, as is carbon capture. We are not going to get to where we need to be unless we have the technology for the carbon capture. We have to develop that. So all of this is part of the Green New Deal. All of this is part of this revolution and creating the urgency and putting the investment into this innovation so that we are taking it out of the laboratory into the marketplace and creating the jobs in the green economy that is inclusive and meanwhile saving the planet. But thank you for raising this.
And if I may, Congresswoman, I'd just like to add one more thought. About 5 weeks ago, I went down to Brayton Point, which is in Somerset, which had coal burning plants down there for 2 generations. And those plants are now shut down. And what they're building on that location is the staging area for receiving the wind that was going to be coming off of our coastline until a oil lobbyist who is the Secretary of Interior killed that project, 800 megawatts, bigger than the Pilgrim nuclear power plant, just 2 weeks ago. And accompanying that, they're building a huge battery storage capacity. That's their plan, to marry wind with the storage capacity, and it's our state that's leading. And that's what is frightening to the Trump administration. That's what's frightening to the Koch brothers, because they want us to consume more oil and natural gas, and we want to consume God's natural gifts to us, because we know that the answer is not in the bottom of a mine, but it's in the solar and wind of our planet. And so just in our own state, and you can just Google this and read about it, it's an incredible project down at Brayton Point to replace the coal with these modern technologies. Yes, sir.
Can I hold it? Can I hold the whole thing? All right. Wait, the whole thing? That's cool. How loud is this? Okay. Hi. I'm Reed. I'm from Natick. Apparently I missed a memo. I was supposed to bring clipboards and petitions, but I'm not here with an agenda. I'm here with a question. I was maybe asking for some advice for people who are running for office. I was wondering whether it's better to, as a person holding political office, whether it's better to hold to your convictions from what you originally learn as policy, to promises, or is it better to have a more open mind and learn things as you go and be adaptive in the new world?
Well, that is sort of the quintessential question of politics, but I think that you can do both. And for me, it's you never surrender those values that you hold, but you have to be open to learning new things. Every day I am exposed to experts in their fields that have knowledge on any piece of this environment, of climate change, of technology that I can't begin to match or truly understand. So you have to be open to that, but remain true to those values, why you ran for office, the values of the communities you represent. And I think if you keep your values, but remain open to change, remain open to new information, remain curious, That's how we can represent our communities the best. That's how representative democracy works at its finest.
And I couldn't have said it any more eloquently than Congresswoman Clark just said it. So we hope you get into the political process, and we're looking forward to your leadership of your generation. Back over here. Yes, sir.
Richard Robinson. I run a small organic vegetable farm in Sherborne. I think it's not a surprise to you that photosynthesis is the most effective carbon sequestration technology on the planet, and that storing carbon in the soil not only is good for the atmosphere, it's good for agriculture. And I'm wondering what policies are available to you for promoting farmers across the country to store more carbon in their soils, improve their farms at the same time?
Well, we built it into the Waxman-Markey bill, but interestingly, the leadership of the House and Senate Agriculture Committees, led by Debbie Stabenow in the Senate, they actually are now putting in place the policies which move farming in that direction. And it's not as far as we should be going, but for me, it's tremendous change in the attitudes about these issues, but it is already happening in the process over the last year in Congress. Congresswoman Clark?
Just to echo that, that is definitely an issue that is being talked about, debated. The Agriculture Committee recently did a tour of farms in the Midwest that are working on this. So it is real. We know that it is a great way to help clean our air, and we know that reforestation is also a critical piece of what we need to do. We have to take the very high-tech solutions and the natural low-tech solutions that we know can be so effective, and really it's across the spectrum. But thank you, and thank you for your work in Sherborne.
Yeah, thank you for being a leader. So we started about 15 minutes late, so what we'll do is we'll take 10 more minutes of questions, and then we'll be glad to stick around and chat with you if you would like. So we'll try to give answers that are briefer.
Yeah, we'll be briefer.
And try to get to as many people as we can. So yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being with us here tonight. My name is Cece Doucette from Ashland, and I wanted to thank you both for the work that you're doing to try and protect our planet. As we put those plans forth, and we all love our technology, there's no question about that, but we also need to swing back and see what we can do towards safe and sustainable technology. Senator Markey, you mentioned that you helped to pass that Telecom Act in 1996, and there is one section of that, 704, which tells us that if there are any environmental concerns with the cell towers, we have no recourse. And as you may know, on November 1st, our own government, the U.S. National Toxicology Program, published their $30 million study hoping to prove that cell phone technology was safe. They've been doing this study for 20 years, and instead they found clear evidence, that's the highest categorization, clear evidence that radio frequency radiation causes DNA damage and cancers. Right on the heels of that, Italy's Ramazzini Institute published another large study that corroborated what we found here in the US. Other studies throughout the world, peer-reviewed, published scientific literature, links this also to our skyrocketing rates of autism, Alzheimer's, infertility, and is perhaps the reason why so many of us don't sleep well anymore, have headaches our doctors can't account for, because this is a pulsed microwave radiation that all wireless technology uses. So I wanted to be sure you're aware that there's a wonderful resource from the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy out of Washington, D.C., that outlines these issues for us, and every community should be examining this. Brussels has already put a moratorium on 5G because we don't need more wireless infrastructure. We should be focusing on bringing hardwired technology to the premises, and then we can hook up inside through Ethernet cables, which actually give you a much faster connection than anything wireless will ever give us. So my ask of you today is I know that your colleague DeFazio on transportation, Senator Blumenthal, Anna Eshoo, and others are already on this issue in DC, and we would like to see you work on Section 704 of the Telecom Act so that we can legally address the health and environmental impacts of wireless technology.
And I thank you. It's a very important issue. I'm glad that you're raising it. I actually commissioned a study by the National Cancer Institute about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, on the impact of wireless technologies in terms of creating cancers. What they concluded at that time was that while it didn't actually cause them, it could actually accelerate because of the RF, the radio frequency, near the brain, the speed with which an underlying already pre-existing condition would accelerate. So it's a very important study. I think we would both like to see it and to act on it, and we thank you so much for bringing it to our attention. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Very important. Thank you. Yes, right over here.
Hello.
We're down to 5 minutes left to go. Yes.
Dr. Gene Fry from Brookfield. Last time Earth had this much CO2 in the air was 14 million years ago. Kansas was hot as Las Vegas now, and Florida was mostly underwater. The climate feedbacks that threaten to make this happen again are still in their pretty early stages. Talk to us some more, following up what you said to the gentleman 5 minutes ago, about methods and payment plans for taking CO2 out of the air. You might address things that, besides putting in the soil and trees, whether it's biochar, but especially accelerated rock weathering, ocean fertilization, and direct air capture, and how payments for those might be happening, and where we might come up with the money to do that.
Excellent question. Again, we'll begin with photosynthesis. The Waxman-Markey bill would have seen the most trees ever planted at one time since the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s. So we begin with that, and the incentives for people to use nature. Congresswoman Clark was talking about that a few minutes ago. We would need to begin by repealing the $1.5 trillion of tax breaks that millionaires and billionaires got just 2 years ago. They didn't need it, they didn't deserve it, and then we could take that money and then use it for the kinds of programs that you are talking about, because those technologies are out there. We would also need to fund research at the Department of Energy, at the EPA, at each one of these agencies, so that we created a DARPA-like program, the same one that here in Massachusetts invented the internet, because that was a federal government defense program. So all of these things are going to be absolutely indispensable. And you are right, the science is clear. June was the warmest June ever recorded. July was the warmest month ever recorded in recorded history, July of 2019. So time is of the essence, and each one of these technologies should be put at the starting line. We should have a funding mechanism, and we can do that, but we need to win the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And if we do that, here's what I expect. I expect our president, I'm backing Elizabeth Warren, but I expect our president on January 20th of 2021, as part of the inaugural address, to then say, here's what I'm instructing the Department of Energy to do by the end of this month, and the Department of Interior, and the EPA, and the Defense Department, and every other agency to now undertake in order to deal with this existential threat. And that would include the research money in order to telescope the time frame it will take in order to solve these problems. Congresswoman.
And I know we're under a time constraint here to get to as many questions. I just throw out a pitch for a carbon fee as well. I think that is critical to give that signal to the markets, to use private funding, set that carbon fee. We've done it with our partners in the state and Reggie. We've seen it can be successful, but it has to be done on the national level. And if we do that, we can use the markets, we can use private funding to leverage the kind of innovation and frankly, the huge investment it is going to take to create the carbon capture technologies that we're going to need.
And I agree, the Waxman-Markey bill was a carbon fee. It was a cap and trade system that then was producing the money that allowed us to do all this research. So thank you. So this has to be our last question, but we are going to stick around. So,
Margot Roman, Hopkinton, and I want to thank you both so much for doing the projects that you're doing. And a lot of the topics were covered that I want to talk about. One is a veterinarian, who, you know, I've been one for 42 years. I am concerned about animal agriculture. Animal agriculture actually causes more pollution in this earth than cars and planes and trains. And people, we've not addressed it in Paris, we have not addressed it in Kyoto, because nobody likes to be told what they can consume by eating animals and not eating animals. The Impossible Burger, Beyond Meat burgers, they're wonderful, and we have to be encouraging our kids to really understand what good health is and how to prevent disease. And by keeping people healthier, by eating more plants and taking care of our planet, by not encouraging animal agriculture. They say that if everybody went plant-based today, global warming would stop tomorrow. Because there's so much CO2, methane, feces, tons of feces, the amount of land that has to be cut down to put genetically modified corn, soy, and wheat that's damaging our biodiversity of our soil, that's causing dysbiosis in everybody's gut because they're eating Roundup in their gut and their guts are so dysbiotic. We have to really look at this whole picture as part of what our consumers, as a consumer, what we can do today is not to eat more plants and not be killing animals that don't want to die anyway.
Thank you for bringing it up, and I think that, you know, your point is a good one. We don't want to dictate to people, you know, what they can eat, but it's about education, and it's about reducing your meat diet by 20% can make a huge impact. So I think we have to continue to get the word out, to have a public understanding, and let people make choices they want to make, but let those be informed choices. And I think that I have often found that it is our children who are teaching us about a healthy planet. But thank you for your work as a scientist and a veterinarian, and we appreciate your input. All right. We will stick around. I will be brief in just saying thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this movement. This doesn't happen without you. It also doesn't happen without our incredible state and local leaders who are here. We appreciate your support, your partnership in what you do. It starts in our local neighborhoods, it starts in our choices, and I just want to reemphasize what I said in the beginning. In the chaos of Washington, living in a Twitter world where just today I could barely keep up with our president as I moved from meeting to meeting in what he was tweeting, your voice does matter. And you have control in this situation. And it starts with us, it starts in talking, it starts in making sure that we protect the vote. Because as we move into 2020, there can't be anything more important, whether it's climate change, gun safety, immigration, pay equity, health insurance, whatever the issue is, that you get to that ballot and that you have that free from interference from foreign countries and free from gerrymandering and other voter suppression techniques. And that begins with you, that begins with the pressure that you put on the Senate to take up these bills. We have champions like Senator Ed Markey, but we want him to be able to cast a vote. And that is going to take pressure from all of us outside the Beltway, pressure in on those elected leaders who don't want our votes counted and don't want to hold votes on the floor of the Senate. So I am grateful every single day to get to represent Framingham and the communities in Massachusetts 5th District and to be part of the Commonwealth. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your interest and your commitment and passion for this. And a huge thanks to our Senator Ed Markey for his work and for being here tonight. Thank you.
And thank you to Katherine Clark. Great Congresswoman. Thank you for all of your incredible leadership. And thank all of you for being here. Mayor Spicer, thank you for being such a wonderful host and leader, and all of the other elected officials who are here. So the Green New Deal is not just a resolution, it's a revolution that has been unleashed. Reporters in 2016 forgot to ask Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump a question about climate change. The Green New Deal has solved that problem for 2019 and 2020. Everyone's going to be asked that question on every single forum. The Lawrence Livermore Laboratories are the Supreme Court of climate. The whole world looks to them. Ben Santer runs that institution. I asked him, how did the scientists at Lawrence Livermore feel now that they're inside of the Trump administration? He told me that fear is rampant amongst those scientists. You can only imagine. I asked him, what was he going to do? And he said that Great Britain had offered him the job at Hadley, which is there, Livermore, to move the whole team there. I said to him, what are you going to do? And he said, I told our team, we had to stay and fight. We had to stay and fight. That's where that report came from in November of 2018 from all of those agencies. That's the evidence, the scientific evidence, which we have. So that's who all of you are. You're the descendants of all these revolutionaries. The revolutionaries that created the American Revolution, that created the abolitionist movement, that created the suffragette movement, that created the gay marriage movement, that created the Affordable Care Act movement. That's who you are. You are the latter-day revolutionaries who are going to be responsible for ensuring that Massachusetts is the leader. We're only 2% of America, but we're not an ordinary 2%. So here in Framingham and all across the Commonwealth, it is absolutely imperative that we lead, that we show you can do more and you must do more because the science demands it and the next generation demands that we act. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for all of your leadership on these issues. And thank you once again to the great Katherine Clark. Thank you.